news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
Habemus Papam. Eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost, qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem decimum quartum.
For the first time in the history of the Catholic Church, the Pope is an American. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost was elected Thursday as the 267th pontiff, the 69-year-old choosing the name Leo XIV. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra Sunday. I'm Mark Ross. Pope Leo XIV was selected on the fourth ballot by at least two-thirds of the 133 cardinals attending the conclave in Rome. The native of Chicago is seen as a diplomat in the Catholic Church. So how will having an American Pope affect the future of the Church? Joining me now, Bishop Mark Seitz and Father Michael Lewis of the Catholic Diocese of El Paso. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I must ask you both, were you surprised that a Pope was chosen on the fourth ballot and that it was an American?
Well, it's always hard to predict these things. We knew that in recent history the choices have been made on the second or third day, so we knew it could come. But you know, you never can predict these things from the outside. So I'm always surprised. You know, I've lived through a few of these things now, and it's always a surprise, and sometimes even more than others. For instance, Pope Benedict wasn't a huge surprise, but John Paul II certainly was, the Pope from Poland. This one I would put on a similar level because I had heard all of my life that a person that was born in the United States was very unlikely to be chosen as a pope. Concerns about kind of that American point of view having a bit too much play in the world scene. But this was a delightful surprise.
Father Mark?
You're right. I think I was just as surprised as I think most of us were. But I think it also goes to show that we, outside of the conclave, were trying to project our own maybe thoughts about how maybe they didn't know each other enough, that was going to be hard for them to pick one person to lead, or that the church was in some way too splintered. But what you saw instead was quite the opposite. You saw a church that was united. You saw a church that had a good idea already. But also they picked somebody who they did know, because as cardinal, he had the opportunity to go to different parts of the world. As head of his religious order, he had that same opportunity to visit the 43 countries that the Augustinian order is part of. So you were already getting somebody who had that global experience. For us outside, we didn't know that, but apparently the cardinals did.
And I know that in the Italian press they were saying he is the least American of the American bishops, correct?
Well, I think it's fair to say that in a certain way, although I'm sure he'd tell you he's proud of his heritage. He spent 20 years in Latin America, and a missionary, by their very nature, they're seeking to become part of the culture that they serve. They leave aside, in a certain way, something that is close to them in order to drink fully from that culture and to be able to relate and communicate with the people they serve.
Father Lewis, Pope Leo XIV, now the first Augustinian friar to be elected as pontiff. Can you explain the significance of that?
Well, this conclave had more religious, meaning they were ordained priests into a religious order versus, for example, us, who were ordained priests for a diocese. Religious orders have a particular charism, meaning a particular focus for their ministry. And in his case, the Augustinian friars focus on the poor. So when he was sent, in the 80s, I believe, to be a missionary in northern Peru, he was basically sent to go someplace where he didn't know necessarily the language, certainly didn't know the culture, but like Bishop Mark said, to embrace that culture and then to evangelize those people and to bring Christ to them. So again, that's really the mission of the whole church. So for him to have that experience in that local region, I'm sure is giving him a lot of experience in leading the whole church in a missionary way.
I might say, as we are speaking about the Augustinian order, we have had Augustinians serving here until just recently, many years in our own diocese from his same order. So there's been that connection with our diocese.
And Bishop Mark, before his death, Pope Francis commented on the migrant issues happening along the U.S.-Mexico border. He condemned mass deportations, frequently criticized policies that discriminated against migrants. What is your sense about Pope Leo and what his position on migrants may be?
I doubt that you'll see much difference in that regard, because when you have the opportunity to know the people from what we call the sending countries, the ones that are seeing the most emigration, then your perspective changes. You understand why a person would take this incredible risk, why they would want to leave everything they know and love. And it changes the way that you might evaluate it. You also have a commitment to really serving the people that Christ would want to serve. And it gives you a love that you just can't set aside over any political debate.
And you had the opportunity to go to Rome to talk about migration to a group of new bishops. Briefly tell us about that.
That was actually my first and only contact with the new Holy Father. One day, a year or so ago, I received a call in my office, and the person on the other end introduced himself as Cardinal Prevost, the head of the dicastery for bishops. That's the Roman, the Vatican office that is in charge of vetting possible candidates to be named bishops. And I was saying to myself, why are you calling me?
Why me?
You know, that's not the sort of thing that office usually does. But he explained that in preparing for the meeting of bishops, of new bishops that takes place every year in Rome, where bishops that have been chosen in the last year are invited to gather in Rome to learn about their office as it relates especially to their work with the Vatican and understand their own role better. He was reaching out to me to ask me to speak to them about the Church's teaching as it applies to immigrants and the ministry of a bishop to immigrants. So quite an honor for me, and quite an honor to speak to him.
Absolutely. We will continue our discussion about Pope Leo XIV after the break. You're watching ABC-7 Extra Sunday.